Welcome to the DX Today podcast, where you get facts and no hype.
And today, we are diving into a story that's right at the intersection of high art and high tech. We're talking about the Sundance Film Festival. Now, Derek, for decades, Sundance has been the ultimate bastion of human-centric storytelling. It's where you go for gritty indie dramas and raw documentaries. But something shifted recently.
It more than shifted, Chloe. It pivoted. We're looking at a strategic, institutional embrace of artificial intelligence. It's no longer just a side project or a curiosity in a basement gallery. The festival has moved AI into its core programmatic structure. We're talking about the launch of the Sundance Institute AI Interdisciplinary Initiative, or IDP, and new interest tracks like Test Your Tech.
Test Your Tech. That sounds like a lab, not a film festival.
In many ways, it's becoming both. This isn't just about showing movies about robots. This is about using AI as the architect of the film itself. The festival is essentially creating a cross-category AI category that spans everything from dramatic and documentary to the next section.
And they aren't just letting it happen quietly. I was reading the report about the Nonfiction Core Application 3.1. For the first time, filmmakers have to, or at least are asked to, disclose if they use generative AI in pre-production, production, or post. That's a massive step for transparency.
It's a necessary one, given the climate. But let's look at the how before we get to the why. If you want to understand the technical depth here, you have to look at the case studies from the 2024 and 2025 seasons. Take the film Eno, for example. It's a documentary about the musician Brian Eno, but it's what they call a generative documentary.
I remember hearing about this. It's not just one film, right? It changes?
Exactly. It uses a proprietary generative engine to re-edit itself for every single screening. So the version you see on Tuesday night in Park City is technically a different movie than the one I see on Wednesday. That is a fundamental departure from the locked cut philosophy of traditional cinema. You are just watching a file. You're watching a piece of software perform.
That is wild. It's like a live performance by an algorithm. And then there's Being, the Digital Griot. This one really fascinates me because it wasn't just a screen experience. It was an interactive AI bot that engaged the audience on topics like race and patriarchy.
And that's where the technical met the, let's say, the volatile. During a 2024 screening of Being, things got heated. An audience member actually insulted the AI character. The creator, Rashad Newsom, ended up refusing to continue the Q&A. When the festival staff ejected the protester, about a quarter of the audience walked out in solidarity.
Wow. So we are already at the point where people are protesting on behalf of a viewer against an AI creator? Or was it a protest against the AI itself?
It was a bit of both. It's a pressure cooker. You have the 2023 labor strikes still fresh in everyone's minds. You have the below-the-line workers, the editors, the concept artists, who see this tech as an existential threat. And then you have the festival trying to provide a safe space for the tech. It creates this incredible friction.
It's interesting you mention the strikes, because while Sundance is trying to be the adult in the room by asking for disclosures and funding initiatives through the Doris Duke and MacArthur Foundations, their neighbor, Slamdance, is taking a much more Wild West approach.
Slamdance has always been the rebellious younger sibling. In 2025, they accepted a short film called Mom Bomb that was fully AI generated. That set off a firestorm about the theft of training data. Sundance is trying to thread a needle. They want the innovation, but they want it to be ethical.
Ethical AI is the buzzword of the decade. But Derek, let's look at the historical context here. This didn't just pop up overnight. Sundance has been flirting with this for a long time.
You're right. We have to go back to 2007. Shari Frillit launched the New Frontier program. Back then, it was the home for VR, AR, and experimental media. It was where you'd go to wear a heavy headset and look at 360-degree pixels. For almost 20 years, that was the tech lounge.
Right. It was over there, in its own corner.
Exactly. But what we're seeing in 2025 and 2026 is the mainstreaming. AI has left the VR lounge and entered the premiere section. You've got Oscar-winning directors like Daniel Roher, who did Navalny, now using these platforms to explore the existential risks of the tech. It's moved from a special effect to a thematic core.
And the data actually backs up how pervasive this is becoming. I saw a stat in the report citing Adobe's partner data. Something like 85% of Sundance 2025 entrants relied on Adobe Creative Cloud.
Correct. And Adobe has been very aggressive about embedding assistive AI, like speech-to-text or generative fill, directly into the workflow. So even if a filmmaker isn't prompting a whole movie, they are using AI to clean up their audio, to color grade, or to edit faster.
The report said filmmakers cited workflow efficiency as a primary driver, about 29% of them, but 27% said it was about expanding creative abilities. That's the democratization argument, isn't it?
That's the pitch. Tools like Runway Gen 3 or OpenAI Sora. The idea is that a kid in a basement with a $5,000 budget can now produce visual effects that used to cost $5 million. In theory, it levels the playing field against major studios. It fits the indie ethos of Sundance, technically.
But does it? That's the big question. If a film is prompted rather than directed, is it still a Sundance film? I mean, we're talking about a festival that prides itself on original human expression.
And that is the billion-dollar question. You have figures like Guillermo del Toro standing on the other side of the line. He's been very vocal at major festivals, saying he'd rather die than use generative AI. He views it as the death of the soul of the medium. So you have the old guard of masters like del Toro against this new wave of synthetic creators.
It's a total identity crisis, and it's happening right as the festival is preparing for a literal physical move.
Right. In 2027, the festival is moving from Park City, Utah, to Boulder, Colorado.
Why is that significant in the context of AI?
Well, Boulder is a massive tech hub. It has a very different vibe than the ski resort atmosphere of Park City. It's tech adjacent. It's innovative. The move suggests that the Sundance Institute is leaning into that future. They aren't running away from the synthetic frontier. They are moving closer to the people building it.
It feels like they are hedging their bets. On one hand, they're championing transparency and ethics. On the other, they're providing the biggest platform in the world for the very tools that might eventually replace the people in the audience.
It's a tightrope walk. Let's talk about Love Me, which won the Alfred P. Sloan Feature Film Prize. It's a post-human romance featuring AI characters. It's beautiful, it's cinematic, and it's deeply human in its themes, even though the characters aren't. That's the Sundance way of handling this, focusing on the story of the tech. But when the tech becomes the storyteller, that's where the friction starts.
Let's break that down for a second. If I'm a filmmaker and I use AI to generate a background or to de-age an actor, most people are fine with that now. But what about the AI doc? Produced by Daniel Kwan, one of the directors of Everything Everywhere All at Once, that film is looking at AI insanity. It's using the tech to critique the tech.
It's a meta-commentary, and that's a very sophisticated way to handle it. Kwan is a darling of the indie world. By having someone like him involved, it gives the use of AI a certain artistic license. It says, we aren't just using this because we're lazy. We're using it because it's the only way to tell this specific story.
But what about the below-the-line workers? The report mentions that there's a massive anti-AI sentiment among the people who actually make the movies.
And that's the tragedy of the democratization argument. While it helps the solo creator, it threatens the livelihood of the specialized professional. If a director can prompt a storyboard, they don't need a storyboard artist. If they can prompt a score, they don't need a composer. Sundance is currently a platform for both of those groups. The festival is essentially hosting a party where half the guests think the other half is trying to steal their jobs.
And the Test Your Tech track makes it official. It's not a secret anymore. You can literally filter the festival program to find the synthetic films.
Exactly. It's a formalization. No more hiding. If you're a purist, you can use that track to know what to avoid. If you're a futurist, you know exactly where to go. But the middle ground is disappearing.
You know, Derek, looking at all this, the IDP initiative, the generative documentaries like Eno, the interactive bots, it feels like we are watching the definition of cinema change in real time. It's not just pictures at 24 frames per second anymore.
It's data at millions of operations per second. And Sundance is betting that the independent spirit can survive that transition. They are betting that human expression can coexist with algorithmic generation.
It's a risky bet. If they lose, they risk alienating the very creators who built the festival's reputation. But if they don't adapt, they risk becoming a museum for a dead medium.
Well put. The synthetic frontier isn't a destination. It's the current state of the industry. Whether you're a fan of it like the creators of Mom Bomb or a critic like Guillermo del Toro, you can't ignore the fact that the tools are already in the room.
And with the move to Boulder in 2027, it seems like the tech side of Test Your Tech is only going to get louder.
It's the new lens. The report concludes that the AI category isn't just a section of the festival anymore. It's the lens through which the entire industry is being viewed. From the application process to the final screening, the algorithm is now part of the independent journey.
It's a lot to process. Facts and no hype, indeed.
That's the goal. We'll be watching how the 2026 lineup handles these new transparency requirements. It'll be the first real test of how many filmmakers are willing to admit their assistant is an AI.
I have a feeling that number is going to be much higher than people think.
I suspect you're right. For the DX Today podcast, I'm Derek.
And I'm Chloe. Thanks for joining us at the frontier.
We'll see you in the next episode.